Welcome back everybody. Today I'm going to show you how to smoke with every single smoker on the new map Corrode. And starting off with Astra and A-side defense. On A-side defense with an Astra you can smoke right here in the beginning of the round to kind of stop the enemies from even walking in. Or the second option would be a smoke right here. This one is a little bit better. This is the one you're using on most other agents as well. It will stop the enemies from coming into main. If you want to hold the people main, use this smoke. If you want to let the people take this space right here and then hold the people from coming out of main, you're going to use the second smoke. Another smoke I've seen that you can use on defense sometimes, it is a smoke like this one. This one will also only work on an Astra, maybe as well on a Viper with a Viper Orb, but it kind of blocks off the enemies from coming in towards this side and makes it really easy for you to just hold the elbow area, kind of waiting here for the enemies to come in, and then you can use this smoke to kind of stop them from coming in towards the other side. Switching over towards mid now, and on mid there's not really that many smokes you can use. One smoke that you can use sometimes is this one right here, but again I don't really think it's the best one. You can use it as a recall smoke and kind of take the mid space, but this smoke right here is, yeah, it is what it is. If you want to play aggressive on mid, use this smoke. If you, but like else, I don't really see the use of this smoke. Other than that, now switching over towards B, and on B you have a pretty similar option to smoke off the main space like this. This allows you to even go into the smoke right here and kind of stop the enemies from even taking this space. So if you want to play aggressive here, this smoke is the smoke that will help you. And if the enemies are coming in towards the B side, using a smoke right here to stop them from coming in is a pretty good idea. Other than that, what you can do sometimes is to give your team a smoke to kind of fight on site with. A smoke like this can work sometimes, but I don't really recommend that in eco runs. Just waiting in this smoke, waiting for the enemies to come in, and then playing behind the smoke, even waiting here, you kind of have a one-way. You can use a smoke like that as well. Other than that, using an Astra ult is always pretty dependent on where the enemies are coming from. If they have planted on the on the B side, you can use an Astra ball like this to kind of stop them from coming out of main. Use another smoke on top of the spike and go for a defuse. Again, using your Astra ball is a thing I only recommend that you use on retakes to kind of stop the enemies from spamming you when you're trying to go for the defuse. The similar thing is also on A. On A, there's a couple of options for an Astra ball. One Astra ball that I like doing sometimes is one like this. The enemies have planted in this corner here close. You can then have your teammates holding this area right here, stopping the enemies from even coming in, and then a person that is going for the defuse can just go for a defuse pretty easily right there. The other option for an Astra wall would be either one pretty deep, but this one is one I don't recommend at all, because most of the times nobody is playing in main to play post plant, so this wall is pretty bad. And the other option for a wall would be one like this. And then use another smoke, for example here, to kind of block you off, go for a defuse, and then you have your teammates just holding this area right here, and also holding the elbow area, stopping the enemies from coming in from the elbow area right here. Both of these, this wall and the one wall I showed you before, are for the default plant spot. This one you can also use for other plant spots to kind of stop the enemies from coming in, because most of the times they are playing aggressive here on this area, or on elbow. If you think all of the enemies are in elbow, you can also wall off the elbow area like this. Those are the walls and smokes you should use on an Astra on defense. Now switching over towards Brimstone. As you can see, if you put the same smoke right here, there's gonna be a gap on one of the both sides, and it's gonna be pretty easy for the enemies to take this space. As you can see, the gap is pretty small, even though Brimstone has had a buff with his smokes being bigger, but still the gap is still a thing that makes this smoke not that great anymore. So on a Brimstone, I just recommend you use this smoke right here. The other thing why I don't really recommend a Brimstone is because he doesn't have that much range. As you can see, if I'm standing here, I cannot smoke towards the B side. So I don't really think Brimstone is the greatest agent to play on this map. If you're placing the same smoke right here, there's again gonna be a pretty small gap sometimes on one side, and also you can kind of use a molly here, but since Brimstone doesn't really have recharging smokes, I don't really recommend using this smoke right here on a Brimstone. Other than that, for retakes, or what you can do if the enemies are all going through elbow, is you are able to use a smoke right here. This smoke right here is actually a pretty good one. One I recommend on a Brimstone. You can throw a molly into it and make it really hard for the enemies to come out if they are only going through this side, and it makes it really easy for you to just hold the other side. Other than that, for retakes, smoking elbow or smoking on top of the spike is the thing I do recommend. Now for mid it is still a pretty difficult thing. I don't really recommend that you smoke mid on a Brimstone. This still works, but playing aggressive on mid with a Brimstone is useful, but not really the greatest thing that you can do. And for B, again, it is pretty similar as towards an Astra. You can smoke here to stop the enemies from even taking this main space. This is actually a pretty good thing on a Brimstone. You can use a shotgun inside of the smoke, get kills like that, even if the enemies are trying to go for the ult orb, or even peek out behind of the smoke and kind of get an angle on them like that. Again, use the normal smoke right here on main just smoking off the main space with a smoke right here. Then using a molly inside of that smoke, making it really hard for the enemies to come out. For the retake, smoking main and then smoking top of the spike are the smokes I recommend. If you only have one, smoke on top of the spike and help your teammates or let the enemies kind of fight the main space with, for example, an ult in main or just some other util in main, and then go for a defuse on top of the spike. And now switching over towards Clove. Clove is probably the most favorite smokes agent of any game or of any player that plays this game, but you can't really do as much on the Clove. Also, you don't really have the range. So again, if you smoke here, there's gonna be a gap on one of the sides, or if you want to smoke for like normally, you can just use a smoke right here. The good thing about the Clove is that you can use this smoke right here a couple of times. I know your smoke is not going to be the biggest one, but you can use this smoke pretty effectively to kind of stop the enemies from coming in, and also then use your metal to kind of stop the enemies as well. What you can also do on a Clove, since Clove smokes don't hold for too long, is to use a smoke right here, hide in the smoke, use a shotgun to kind of stop the enemies from coming in. Same thing also with elbow, using a smoke right here can be used on a Clove pretty well, because Clove smokes don't hold for too long and kind of stop the enemies from coming in. Same thing also with the smoke right here. If you're too far away to smoke for your team, using a smoke right here can also be pretty effective, kind of stopping the enemies from coming in. And if you have mollies or anything, you can stop the enemies from coming in with the help of the mollies. For mid, similar smoke as on any other smokes agent. The smoke in bottom mid right here is a pretty good one to kind of take the mid space. Also, since Clove smokes don't hold for too long, this smoke is actually a decent one. You can walk down mid and then wait for the smoke to fade, and then go fast flank towards, for example, B side or towards the A side, depending on where you have info on the enemies. And again, same thing here on main, using a smoke here, playing inside of the smoke, going even through the smoke, peeking out behind it, getting killed like that, and then going out again can be pretty effective. Or you just use your normal smoke right here on main to stop the enemies from coming in. A really important thing about this smoke right here is, for this smoke, in order to use this smoke, you need to have players playing aggressive on the B main space, or just threaten the aggressive peek right here to kind of stop the enemies from coming in that way. Else, always use this smoke. Same thing also, by the way, on A. If the enemies if you have a teammate that is actually like aggressively peeking this area, smoke in this spot. And if they are not aggressively peeking that area, just smoke in the main space. Other than that, for a retake, if you have two smokes, smoke main, and then use the second smoke on top of the spike. They've planted here, and then go for defuse. On the smoking on top of the spike is the thing I recommend most of the times for a retake. Smoking the main space to kind of stop the enemies, or stop the enemies from holding you while you're coming into the site is also pretty effective. So first main, and then the side smoke. If you only have one smoke, smoke on top of the spike, and go for the defuse. And use some util to stop the enemies from picking you in main, and like that you can have an easy time playing post plant with a Clove or any other smokes agent. Especially important on a Clove, if you have smokes in a post plant and you are dead for your team, but you can still smoke the site, tell that to your teammates and ask them where they want to smoke. Don't just place smokes on random spots. That can grief your team and also can kind of ruin your teammates' ideas. If you're still alive, smoking main is always a great idea. Even if you're dead, resmoking main is in general the thing that you are going to do on a Clove. Harbor is actually kind of an interesting agent to smoke with on Corrode. You are lacking kind of the ability to smoke both sides and like at the same time, so you can only play on one side, but you're really good at holding that one space. What you can do, for example, you can use a cascade like that to kind of stop the enemies from coming in. This is a smoke you can only do on a Harbor, and with that smoke you can play aggressive, take the ult torp, or even then use a wall like this, kind of even stopping the enemies if they are coming through mid, and kind of take the space here on main aggressively. The other option for a wall is if you have flashes, for example breach flashes or something that can kind of go through this wall or above this wall, you can use a wall like this to take even more aggressive space and make it really hard for the enemies to even come through here. A thing I really like doing is to play aggressive right here with a wall like this, having a fade reveal up here and then having a flash coming through to kind of make sure the enemies are going back. It's gonna be a pretty util intensive aggressive play. If you have a Euro, you can do that. For example, you can use a flash here, you can use this wall here, and then you can use a fade reveal. That is already 3 people on the A side. That means you can only have 1 person on B, 1 person in mid, or 2 person on B and some util in mid to kind of stop them from coming there. But with a play like that, you can have the A main space pretty aggressively and pretty easily. Other than that, just smoking the A main space with a wall like this can be pretty good. Kind of stopping the enemies from coming in. Also giving yourself the option to go here close, kind of hiding here, maybe even getting a kill. If you want to play close there, I recommend that you're playing a Phantom. Another thing that you can also do is something like this, giving yourself a copy to play in behind here. Sometimes the enemies are going to expect it, sometimes they're not going to expect it, but kind of threatening you being behind the wall right there is a pretty good idea, and then even just waiting here and waiting for the enemies to come in. Other than that, also using your wall like this to stop the enemies from coming in. Same thing also if you're on site. To stop the enemies from coming in can be pretty good. Same thing also towards mid if the enemies are coming through the mid area. Other than that, even using your wall in this way, kind of walling off both of the areas is a pretty good idea. You kind of wall off yourself here as well, but it also makes it pretty hard for the enemies to come out there and then take this space over this side as well. And if you have an AWP on this side, or just somebody with, for example, a Phantom or even an Odin waiting here, spraying through, it's gonna be a pretty good idea to stop the enemies from coming in. Now switching over towards mid, and on mid you can use the same smoke on bottom mid as you would on any other smokes agent. You can walk all the way down with your cascade and then stop it. Even hiding here close. This is especially good if you have a Yoru. Yoru can then get a kill like that and TP out. This can be pretty good for aggressive plays. Also, Harbor's Cascade not holding for too long is a pretty good thing that you can use to kind of stop the enemies from coming in. Also, if you feel like the enemies are splitting mid through B, or they are splitting mid towards A, you can use a wall like this and kind of stop the enemies from coming in here, and also stopping them from coming in from the mid space. This also allows you to play in this close copy right here if you have a teammate that is playing in this area. And now switching over towards B, and on B you can use a similar thing. You can use a wall like this, either stopping it here, leaving you a gap or no gap at all, or even letting it go a little further to over here, kind of stopping the enemies from even coming into this area. Maybe even then getting Doltorp can be pretty effective. Just usually smoking off the main space with either a wall like this can be pretty good, or even a wall like this where you give yourself a little small copy on the other side here to be able to hide in, making sure nobody can see you as you're hiding here, even walking over a little bit over, so if they spam this corner they're not gonna hit you, and then peeking out can be pretty effective. And for the retake, on both sides, save your Cove to kind of throw it on top of the spike and go for a plant or a diffuse. And then using Cascade towards main, using a wall towards main is a pretty good idea. The one thing that I recommend when you're playing a Harbor is to have a really good Sentinel that can hold space on one side and then the Harbor on the other side. Because Harbor has a lot of walls, he can stall out a lot of time, and especially if you have a good Sentinel on the other side, the Sentinel can hold one side, Harbor can hold the other side, and the rest of the team can just help out the Sentinel or the Harbor to hold the side. And then you play Retake on the Sentinel side with all of the Harbor util, for example the Cove, also the Cascades and the walls to kind of stop the enemies from even coming in. So in general, I think Harbor can be a pretty good pick, but you kind of need to know that you can't really smoke off the main space on both sides if you're playing a Harbor. Unless you're playing mid and fast rotate, which is a thing I don't really recommend to do on a Harbor, because Harbor is really strong at holding a site and not really that good at playing as a normal smoke sage. And now switching over towards the Omen, and Omen again can use the same smoke here, but you have to kind of be aware that there's going to be a gap on one side, and the space right here can be taken pretty easily, or you're just using the default smoke right here on main. The other good thing about an Omen is you can place Omen smokes pretty easily, and also you can play in a lot of different off angles here, and even using your TPs to kind of go into different spaces, especially if you have a smoke right there. You can hold from this side, get a kill, TP into your own smoke, and then hold from the other side again. Other than that, just using your smokes on the elbow area here, on the main area there, and on the elbow area here to stop the enemies from coming in. Same thing also here can be done sometimes, especially if you have shotguns, or even here, kind of stopping the enemies from coming in. Also, as well, playing inside of the smoke. If the enemies are coming through mid, you can use a smoke here, stop the enemies from coming in. By the way, this is smoke you can use on almost any agent. I don't really recommend it on most because they don't have recharging smokes. If they do have recharging smokes, this smoke can be used pretty effectively to stop the enemies from splitting A through mid. If you're trying to smoke for mid, using this smoke right here is the one smoke you're going to use. It's pretty simple. You're going to use this smoke on most agents if you want to play aggressive on mid, but it also tells the enemies that you are playing aggressive on mid. So using it every time when you're playing aggressive on mid is kind of a risky thing, because then they're going to expect you playing here aggressive and they're going to speed up on their side. You can also kind of use that to threaten mid aggression. Really good on an Omen because again he has recharging smokes. And now switching over to B, and B is the same as on any other smokes agent, smoking off this area, kind of holding it, playing aggressive, or using your normal smoke here on main to stop the enemies from coming in. Other than that, again, on the side, if they have planted, if you want to go for defuse, you can use smokes like these. And again, resmoke main to kind of stop the enemies from coming in. The other good thing about an Omen is that you can play pretty aggressively even on the side. So for example, if the enemies are coming in, they are smoking for themselves, so they're smoking here in heaven. And they are smoking here in link. You can play here and then TP out towards heaven in a pretty simple way and kind of get out of harm's way. So playing an Omen more of kind of as a duelist can be pretty effective and makes it really hard for the enemies to take the site. And now switching over towards Viper, and Viper is actually kind of an interesting pick. Viper can be used pretty well as a double smokes agent, as on most maps, where you can like throw her orb on one side to kind of stop the enemies from coming in, and then using your wall in a way to kind of stop the enemies from coming into a different space. For example, if you use a wall like this one, you can have a wall that goes through mid, through B, and also kind of blocks the enemies off as they are coming in. Also, this little spot right here is kind of a really good one way if you place it the right way. If you get your Viper wall to stop on top of this thing, and can help you pretty well to hold the mid space. And if you use your wall in that way, you can have a lot of control over all of the map. You can use your orb also right here in main, or if you have the lineup, I do not have the lineup because I don't play Viper that often on this map, you can use a orb like this to kind of stop the enemies from even coming into the main space. If you feel like they're coming through, you can just use a molly to stop them from coming in. Other than that, what I also really like about the Viper is a wall like this, kind of giving you the option to play for the side hold with a wall like this. You give the enemies a lot of space, but again, as soon as you put that wall up, you have a small gap here to hold the enemies, and the enemies that are coming through this wall here are going to take a lot of damage. Same thing also here. And it also allows you to play in this close corner here. I don't recommend playing Viper as a solo smokes, but you can use a Viper pretty well to play defense on this map and kind of replace the Sentinel. This part of the wall here doesn't really matter, but you can use it if the enemies are trying to play more or less for a mid split, but I don't really have a real use for that wall. Another wall that I really like is a wall like this one, blocking off mid, blocking off the area right here, allowing you to just hold this area, and then also blocking off the main space. Again, also really good is this little copy here to dodge any information util or flashes as soon as the enemies are trying to come in, which makes it really hard for them to come in. And then again, using mollies in main to stop them from coming in. This is, in my opinion, the best wall you can use for defense because it blocks mid, it blocks the mid link area, and it also blocks A, and you're already close towards B that you can just throw your orb right here in main, or even a little bit deeper over towards this side to block off the main space like that. Then using mollies as soon as the enemies are trying to come in is a pretty good idea. Another option for a wall would be something like this. It can work sometimes. It also allows you to kind of walk down mid a little bit and play in this close corner right here, especially if you have a Yoru. This corner is a pretty strong one. And you can take a lot of the space in mid as well with this wall, and then you will have to sprint over towards the other side and use your orb towards the A main space right here. And then as soon as you hear anything going on P, you use your wall. If you hear anything on A, you use your orb. And if either of them goes down and you're on that side, you can then decide to use your molly to stop the enemies from coming in and stall them out for a even longer time. And now switching over towards attack. And on attack, it is pretty simple. As an Astra, you're most likely smoking off the elbow area and then the CT area. For the CT area, you also have a second option to smoke right here with an Astra because Astra smokes are pretty big. What you also can do to kind of take the space right here aggressively is to place a star right here, recall that, focus more on the elbow area. With a recall star right here, you need to have some teammate that is holding that area and also the smoke to be up. This is a pretty strong thing you can do to kind of take this space and also take the elbow space. If you want to focus more on taking the space right here on the left side, recall a star here, focus more on the people here close, and then go towards the side. The other option that you have is to then smoke here and go for a plant. If you want to take even more space, you can use the smoke all the way back here, but then I recommend that you have some util to clear up behind these boxes. What you can also do sometimes is to kind of use a smoke right here close, especially on eco runs that can be used pretty well to stop the enemies from picking you from elbow if you're only taking the space right here on main. If you want to use a ult, there's two options. One option I really like, especially on eco runs, a pretty strong one, is this one right here, either like that or like that. This is really good if you want to go from elbow and also have maybe a agent that has flashes that can flash through this wall and fight the people that are playing behind here. Or the second option is a wall like this one, where you use it all the way in the back, smoking off these areas right here. Also, you give the enemies a small cubby right here on this side to hide in, so you need to have a way to clear that out. Other than that, this wall is probably the best wall you can use to take the space, and then use your smokes to kind of re-smoke the CT area in these two spots. Now switching over towards mid, and on mid it is pretty simple. You are using a smoke right here. This smoke will not allow the enemies from peeking you from the top part here, and also allow you to walk all the way up. You kind of have to worry about people going into this corner right there, but other than that, there's not really much you have to worry about. Also, people peeking you from the stairs area right here. Other than that, if you want to take the split B through mid, you can use a star up here and then fight the people that are playing on B. Talking about B, the smoke that the smokes that you're going to use on B are these two. One in heaven. The heaven smoke is one I recommend that you do all of the times, because it is just a really strong spot where the enemies can play from, and it also is really hard to clear out because you don't really have any util to get up there unless you are having like a Chet or a Waylay that can dash up, or even an Omen that can TP up. And then the second smoke is going to be this smoke right there. Another smoke that you can use sometimes, but it is not really worth it, most of it, it is a smoke right here, or even a little further out like this, but that will allow the enemies to play inside of this smoke and also allow them to kind of peek out behind it, holding you from this really strong angle right here, and then disappearing into the smoke. So using a smoke right here is not the greatest idea that you can do. For an ult, it is pretty hard to use a ult on the B side. The one ult that I found out works kind of is a ult like this, kind of blocking off the heaven area like this. And you are giving the enemies, however, a lot of space towards the backside where they can just jump down if they are in heaven, even kind of jump spots like this to get information, and that isn't really the greatest smoke that the greatest ult that you can use. So I recommend that you're just using your wall towards A and not really on B in this way, or you can just use it, for example, like a normal smoke, so similarly to something like this, and then use another smoke up here. Kind of save yourself one smoke and take the space like this. Or you can even use a ult like this, giving you not a lot of space to fight with, but allowing you to go for a plant and then go back towards main and play post plant with. And now switching over towards the Brimstone. Brimstone is pretty similar as to an Astra. You're using a smoke right here in the elbow area. You can use your stim beacon, check for the close corners, and then once you're taking the site, you can use the smoke. You can use the smoke all the way on CT, or you can use it right here.
Smoke's down.
This smoke right here is not the greatest smoke. On an Astra it is a little bit better. You can't really use the smoke right here on a Brimstone because, as you can see, there's going to be gaps on either of the two sides. So using the smoke right here in the close part is the better one, but it also kind of limits your ability to take the space here over the elbow area. Other than that, then going for a plant is, and you'll probably have already taken all of the space that you have to. What you can do after that to kind of stop the enemies from coming in is either re-smoke here on Link, or use the same smoke I've shown you before right here, with maybe a molly inside to stop them from coming in. This can be pretty effective, and you can also kind of hold the gap right here to stop the enemies from coming in. If you want to take the mid space, again, it's the similar or the same smoke as on an Astra, using a smoke up here. And then if you want to take more space on top mid, you're using a smoke right here. If you're going to B is pretty simple on a Brimstone. Just use a smoke right here on tower and on Link. And you can also kind of use the smoke here on elbow, but then you need to go for the side take because you have used all of your 3 smokes and you don't have any recharging smokes after that. If you only have one smoke, smoke the heaven area off and kind of pre-aim or even pre-fire this area right here on Link. The heaven area is, in my opinion, the most dangerous one you have to worry about, so this is the area that you're always going to smoke off if you're taking the B space. And now switching over to his Clove. Clove, pretty similar. Here on elbow, but you can do with the Clove sometimes if you don't want to take the elbow area, is this smoke right here and focusing more on the people on the on you taking the side area, and then if you have another smoke you can re-smoke this area right here. But this smoke right here on elbow is not really one I recommend that you do most of the times unless you're on like an eco round and you want to go somewhere really fast. And again, if you want to take more space, you can also smoke back there. But you can do sometimes, but it isn't the greatest thing either. If you have planted on top of these boxes, or like at the feet of these boxes, you can go for a plant right here. And if you use your smoke all the way in the back right here, you're kind of gonna have a one-way, but it isn't the greatest one-way you're gonna have. Even if you're planting right here, there's still an option to kind of hide in it. But if you're planting all the way on this edge, you're gonna have a pretty good one-way. Maybe you're gonna be able to see the feet of the people going for a defuse, and you can get an easy kill on them. Other than that, there's not really much you can do on a Clove. Clove is, in my opinion, not really that good of a smoker on this map. In general, I don't think Clove is that good of a smoker. In general, I know Clove is pretty strong. I know Clove has a pretty cool character design, and Clove has a lot of abilities she can use for herself. But still, Clove is, in my opinion, just overrated. And now switching over to his mid. Mid, pretty similar. This smoke right here. And then also a smoke up here in top mid if you want to switch, if you want to split over to his B. And B, again, same things. Not really that much of a difference between most of the smokes. Heaven and Link are the two areas you're going to smoke off. If you're splitting the B space through mid, don't smoke off the Link area, just smoke off the Heaven area, and you're basically done. You can then also decide to re-smoke the elbow area if you have enemies coming in through here, and even play inside of this smoke right here, or peek out behind it and fight the enemies that are coming here in this Link area. What you can do, kind of, but not really that well, is use a smoke on top. If you're using it right in the middle, it's going to be quite a good one way to kind of play post plant with. So if you have planted in this area, you can have a insane one way like that and make it really hard for the enemies to go for a diffuse. This is a thing you can do on most smokes agent. You cannot do it on an Astra, you cannot do it on a Viper with a Viper Orb, but you can do it on a Brimstone, you can do it on an Omen. Brimstone smoke is probably the one that is really close. You can sometimes see the legs. Just make sure you place your smoke in a far corner away. So if you have planted in this corner, make sure that you place your smoke at around the mid spot right here, making sure you have a one way like that. And now switching over towards Harbor, and in my opinion, Harbor is the most interesting smokes agents to play on this map. You can use a Cascade to kind of take the main space like this. Stop it right here, even go over, and then use another Cascade either towards this to focus more on taking this little small space over here, or you can even use a Cascade from this corner over here to block off the cross here and take the space on the elbow. The other option that you have is to use a smoke in a similar way, like this, then smoking off the CT area, or even using your smoke like this and blocking off the CT area. If you do it even better, you can use a smoke like that to not give the enemies this copy right here. Harbor's walls are really interesting to use as smokes, and I think Harbor is actually a pretty effective agent you can use on this map. The other really good thing about the Harbor is that you can kind of get away from the spam on the elbow area by using your Cascade. Your Cove, the kind of one thing that you have to worry about, sometimes it flies a little weird, but like that you can get out of a lot of areas while the enemies are trying to spray you, and you can then go for an easy plant. Even better, go for a plant like this and kind of block off the spam that is coming from the enemies that are trying to stop you from going for a plant. Other than that, smoking elbow is also pretty good on a Harbor, like that, and then taking this space right here and using a Cascade towards CT if you don't have any smokes anymore is also pretty good. You can block off all of this space. If you want to take the mid space, using a wall like this can be pretty good. The good thing about this wall is actually that you can even walk up with it and then clear out this close area, and then you can use a second wall like this and use a Harbor wall like this to kind of block off the Heaven area. It is kind of a weird thing on a Harbor sometimes. This wall, sometimes it goes down, sometimes it stays up. Just make sure to look up as high as you can and make sure that you also get all of the space here. And now switching over to its B, and B is pretty similar. You're using a wall like this and then a wall like this. It is kind of hard to get it perfectly here in Heaven. Just try to get it in this front area if possible. If it isn't possible, you know what to do. Look up. It makes your wall really slow and you can throw it more precise. So like that you can kind of practice on how to get this wall in the right way. And in general, if you want to play a Harbor, I recommend that you play him in a custom game before, especially to place the walls so your walls are always on time and there's not really gaps. What you can do, but that doesn't work that well on Heaven, is to use a Cascade. As you can see, if somebody is playing on Heaven, they can kind of jump and watch over the Cascade if they're playing close. It gives them a pretty weird head glitch, and walling off the Heaven area like that is not the greatest idea. Make sure to get your wall into Heaven like that, or what you can do, this is a thing that I recommend you not do most of the times, but on Corrode it is kind of necessary because you can't wall off the Heaven area, is to throw off a Cove towards the Heaven area to kind of wall off this area. You can also use a lineup for that. I don't have one, but I can try to get one, or can try to show you how I get my lineups. I just check, I mark, I estimate, yeah, it's gonna fly like that. This might hit, this might not hit. As you can see, this one not hit, so I'm going to throw it a little steeper. So I'm gonna do the same thing again till I get a lineup that is more reliable, and then I try to find like a spot where I can always throw it. For example, right here, I'm gonna use the bubble here, this top edge, and then I throw it like this. This might be enough. As you can see, this one worked perfectly, and now I have a new lineup I can use for a harbor if I want to use a cove in towards the Heaven area. What you can also do, especially on eco runs, is to use a wall like this, use a cascade like this, take the space, use your cove on the default plant spot and go for a plant. Same thing also here, go for a plant, have a teammate that is holding your cove from the inside, and just go for a plant like that. It makes it pretty easy for you to get in. Other than that, a thing that is pretty common is that the enemies are spamming this main space. You can kind of counter that with using a cascade here, then flashing out and fighting the people that are playing close. And now switching over towards the Omen. Omen, it is pretty similar again to any other smokes agent, except for Harbor and Viper. In the end, you will also see you can use a smoke here as well, or you use your smoke all the way in the back over there. If you want to take the elbow space, what you can do sometimes with an Omen is to kind of use a one-way like that. But this also allows the enemies, if they have shotguns, to play inside of this smoke, so it isn't really a thing I recommend, and it's more of a thing that helps the enemies to fight the space. You can then also peek out from this backside, and also from this side, out of this smoke. Then resmoking the CT area, or smoking here to kind of stop the enemies from coming in again, is a pretty good idea. Even playing inside of the smoke can be pretty effective. The link smoke is one you're going to throw most of the times if you're trying to take this space right here. For mid, same thing as on any other smokes agent. Smoke the bottom part here, and then if you want to take more space, smoke the top part here as well. And then also using a smoke in Heaven, like this, if you're splitting through mid towards B. And for B, Link, Heaven, and that is basically it. If you want, you can also smoke here the elbow area, or what I actually recommend that you do is use a flash like this, flashing the close area here and flashing the elbow area right here, pushing the people back that are playing in these areas and making it really easy for you to take that space. Another really cool thing that you can do with a flash like this, and if you have enemies or teammates going into the other side, is to TP like this. It is kind of a safe TP. You have to worry about this little corner over there, but else it is a pretty safe TP that you can use. If somebody is playing here, they are most likely dead, unless it is like a Yoru or a chamber that can TP out. But other than that, using this TP can get you a lot of space on the site and make it easier for you to take this space. Viper is probably the hardest one to smoke right on this map. You can use a wall like this to block off this area, or you can even use a wall in a similar way to block off the one side of the site, like this. This wall can kind of help you to take the space. I would recommend that you put it up, take the elbow space, and then you put it down again. And then as soon as you want to take all of the site, you can put it up again and have a wall that blocks off the CT area and also blocks off this area right here as well. If you're using the wall I've shown you before right here, you can use a orb towards the CT area. This is a pretty good thing that you can do with a Viper orb, block off this area and stop the enemies from coming in with a molly. You can also use your ult on site. This is where Viper is actually really strong, because it also allows you to go into this corner here. It also allows you to play close here. And then you can even kind of get out, use a molly like this, if you have planted in the area here close, and stop the enemies from going for a diffuse, to stop the enemies from going on the default plant spot right here. That is the good thing about the Viper, to hold on to space, but a Viper using a Viper as a smokes agent is not really the greatest thing, and it's going to make it pretty hard for you to take a lot of the space on this site. Other than that, if you want to take mid, you can kind of use your orb for that, but it isn't the greatest thing that you can do. Also, it requires you to kind of peek out, so using your orb in that way is not the greatest idea. Also, you kind of need to have a lineup for this, for example, from down here. And as you can see it on the mini map and also on the big map. If I throw my orb like this, it will land close. I think it is kind of glitched here actually. So if I like throw an orb like this, it will fly quite far. But on most other maps, you're gonna have an easy lineup way with this orb right here. You can see it here. Other than that, if you want to take the B space, or if you want to take mid in like two ways, you don't really have a way to take the space. Pretty simple. So I just recommend using a wall like this, and then even using your orb towards Heaven, maybe even with a lineup. I've shown you before on how you can get a lineup. This orb right here wouldn't be the greatest. I recommend that you have an orb that lands at around here. Other than that, once you have taken the site, you can again use your ult. Your ult is pretty strong, but don't play Viper as a single smokes, it's not really worth it. You can use a Viper pretty well to hold space, but if you want to play a Viper, play another smokes agent with a Viper in general. And now over to the rankings. I would actually give a Astra the S tier. She has global smokes, also her smokes are pretty big, so you can use an Astra pretty well, and the rest of her util also makes her pretty good. Then to Brimstone, I would give Brimstone the B tier. His smokes are pretty useful to stop the enemies from coming in, but the map is just way too big. You can't really smoke every spot with a Brimstone, and also he doesn't have recharging smokes. And I would also give the B tier to the Clove. Clove, again, map is way too big, not really that great for a Clove, and also her smokes don't hold for too long. She has recharging smokes, but since they don't hold for too long and you're gonna have quite some time to take the site, I don't really think using a Clove is the best idea. I would give Omen actually the A tier. I think Omen can be used pretty well. His weakness is also it takes quite a long time if you have smokes far away, but especially if you're playing mid, that doesn't really matter. You can smoke pretty fast, and also his smokes are pretty good. And now over to Harbor. Harbor is a thing. I'm not 100% sure where I have to put him. I would personally give him the S or even the A tier, so I'm gonna put him above the Omen on A tier. He is not able to smoke both sides, but still his smokes are insanely suppressive, and especially on attack, his smokes can be used in a lot of really good ways. Also his Cove allowing him to go for a defuse almost whenever is a pretty strong thing about the Harbor, and he has a lot of ways on how to smoke off certain areas. You kind of need to practice with a Harbor, but I think Harbor is an A tier smoker on the map Corrode. And now switching over to a last smokes agent, and in my opinion by far the worst smokes agent, can be used pretty well on defense but not that good on attack. I would give Viper the C tier. If you use her with double smokes, she can be an A tier agent, not an S tier agent. I still think there's better agents to use as double smokes on this map, but Viper, that is the thing that you kind of struggle with a Viper. You don't really have good walls you can use to smoke off the certain areas, and also you need lineups for her to throw her orb, and if you have her wall up and her orb up at the same time, it's gonna drain your poison pretty quickly, and you can't keep the smokes up for too long. So I think this is my final tier list. S tier for Astra, A tier for Omen and Harbor. Harbor has some parts where he struggles, but he's also really strong at some other parts, that's why he's in the A tier. B tier for Clove and Brimstone. I would actually pick Brimstone over Clove. I know most of you will probably not agree with me, but I still don't think Clove is that good of an agent, and Brimstone just has a lot of kind of stopping power, which makes him a pretty good pick on this map as well. And then putting a Viper in the C tier as the worst smokes on the new map Corrode. If you want to see any other guides that you can also use on the new map Corrode, I'm gonna have a second week of putting out only Corrode videos for the whole week. So you can come by my channel and watch the playlist. And in general, I think you can learn a lot from it. Also, what I'm going to do on next Sunday, I know I should have uploaded this video on the Sunday. I didn't have enough time to fully edit it. So I'm gonna have one for sure on next Sunday is a agent tier list on every of the agents that we have in Valorant right now on the new map Corrode, and my thoughts on them, and kind of what makes them strong, what makes them weak, and what in general you have to worry about the new map in Corrode, and how to play it in a pretty good way. That would be it from me. If you want to see any other agent on any other maps or any other smokes guides on any other maps, write them down in the comments. And if you have any improvement ideas or just ideas in general or things that you have in your comp games that you're not quite sure about and questions, write them down in the comments. I will try to answer them as fast as I can and maybe even make a video about them. And as always, don't forget to like and sub and come say hi to me on Twitch where I stream almost daily. Have a great rest of your day and see you guys very soon. Bye!